Okay, I think everyone needs to agree to be recorded for things to move on. So I hope that's all okay with you. First of all, just very briefly, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Gemma Tully. I'm the marketing associate for Gorgias, and as Christine has said in the chat, it is wonderful to see so many Gorgias friends, authors, family here. Thank you to everyone for joining us to celebrate 25 years of Gorgias Press. A particular special thanks to our special guest author speakers, who we're going to come to in a moment. And of course, the biggest thanks of all to George and Christine for keeping the press going for 25 years while juggling at least 1,001 other things. So without further ado, let's begin the first part of today's session. So we'll hand over to George and Christine Kiraz, the Gorgias Press co-founders, for anyone that doesn't know, who are going to talk a little bit about the history of Gorgias Press and how we came to be and how we've survived. Over to you, George.
Thank you so much, Gemma. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming to share the 25th anniversary celebration of Gorgias Press. Um Gorgias really started with somebody getting fired, or I guess somebody getting laid off. I used to be, as some of you may know, I'm a computational linguist. I used to work in technology, first at Bell Labs and then on Wall Street with Nuance Communications, where I established a New York office for one of the Silicon Valley companies. But then the dot-com crash came in 2001, and that was the end of that. But prior to that, Christine had always said, George, why don't we start a publishing house or a bookshop in Manhattan? I'm like, Christine, you need hundreds of thousands of dollars to do something like that. We don't have such money. But I guess when you're desperate, you start looking for avenues. And I discovered something that was novel at the time, print on demand, which all of you are probably familiar with now. But that was not something that is familiar. And I looked into it and then I ran to Christine. I said, I think we can do it. Because with print on demand, you don't have to print books and store books. You just create them and we can work without anybody paying us. We can work and create these books and upload them to the printers and only spend money when somebody orders a book. So technology was very important to the establishment of Gorgias, and of course everything had to be done from home. You see us now in our very nice home library, but this did not exist. This is an extension to a very small room that once housed about five Gorgias employees, packed on top of each other. Everything started here at home, and then I won't get into the physical space. Christine will talk a bit more about that. But although we started by ourselves doing everything, and I remember Christine being student, still doing her PhD, and coming back from the PhD after having a baby, to add to the juggle. And we would stay till like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, designing covers for reprints, which of course we had to teach ourselves how to do that. But now we have a great team, and our team has always been helpful and believed in what we do. I remember Thomas Buchan, one of our earliest editors, when we decided to move to the basement, we needed to wire the entire thing with internet, um, before the days of wireless, of course. And in order to save some money, he's like, George, let's look it up. So we looked it up on the internet how to do that and bought some equipment. And he started cutting wires and figuring out the red and the blue and the green and I don't know what. and we built an entire network. Um, and I also want to mention Melanie, who is the longest standing employee, I think, of Gorgias. She came from England for an interview, and we did the interview. And on her way back, I was taking her back to the station, and I just remember driving out of the driveway and thinking, this is going to work out. Of course, I didn't tell her at the time. You know, she had to fret for a bit before I tell her she got the job. Um, and now you've heard from Gemma, another team member, and the rest of the team, of course. We will acknowledge them at the end. But then maybe Christine, you want to say a few things?
Right, you're gonna be muted. Sorry, we're in the same room, so did you mute?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. My voice is not echoing, is it?
Mm.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So, hello everyone. For those who don't know me, I am Christine Kiraz, also known as the wife of George Kiraz and the mother of his three children. So I wanted to kind of like go back to when we first started back in 2001 in our house, which we're coming to live. Um, and it was smaller then. We had an expansion in 2020 during COVID. We have a nice library we can sit in now, but we didn't before. And so in the physical space, we just started out first. It was the guest room. We had just a baby, and it was only one child, so we had a spare guest room, and that became the shipping area for Gorgias Press. And there was a guest bed, which would get cluttered with boxes, and the orders would pile up. And I remember George would get so excited, and he's like, "I'm gonna go to the post office. I have to get these 20 books out." And it was great. I was very excited for him as well. I had just had a baby. I was in my third year of PhD getting ready to defend my proposal. And my PhD is actually in chemistry, so I actually physically had to be in lab running experiments at the same time. And also the challenge of being a new mother. And as George said, we would come back and whatever and work till midnight. And what George doesn't remember is I would have to sometimes pick up crying Tabitha and nurse her to sleep so that we can come back and continue to work. Um, and then as the press grew, we had more children. We actually have our middle child. We named after Sebastian Brock, who's been such a generous leader in Syriac studies, and it seemed like apt name to give to our child. And during that time, those poor kids ended up having to stay in the same room because we needed to make room for the boxes. So we then decided to expand downstairs, and slowly over the years, it was not just the annex, it was the den, it was the dining room, it was the kitchen. And before it started going on longer to more area, I basically said, we need to get out of the house. I can't do this. And we had a third child, and three children were all sleeping in one room. And so we moved to another location on Centennial, which released offices. And at that time, we had a great launch. And that was it 2008, if I remember correctly? And of course, during that time, we also needed some financial infusion. So what happened was I used to work at Allergan Pharmaceuticals. For those of you who don't know Allergan, they make Botox. And I had my stock shares. And when I decided to go back to grad school, I said, you know what, like just put that in my 401k. Apparently, they're not allowed to do that because I was not vested in my stocks yet. So come 10 years later, they contact me. Allergan stock has shot through the roof. And they're like, we're looking for the estate of Christine Altinus, my maiden name. And and they're like, you have this money. Can we give it to you? And we're like, sure. And it came at a really great time where we needed to infuse Gorgias with some cash to keep it going. And we've had our challenges over the years with financials. And when we first started, George only wanted to concentrate on making the books and producing them. And I was very excited to help him design the covers. Um, but he was not excited about keeping track of the checks that would come in. So I think a couple of months into it, he came to me one day. He's like, Christine, I have all these checks. We need to go deposit them. And I looked at the dates of those checks. Some of them had come like 3 months before. And I was like, George, what are you doing? We can't live like this. We actually need to make sure. I mean, this is in the very, very early days. So it was me and George, and nobody was getting paid. So we didn't have to worry about payroll. So it was clear I had to take over the finances and I took over the accounting, had to deal with a lot of distributors and Amazon. I know you all love Amazon, but they're not always nicer to the publishers. And so there was a lot of negotiations that went and happened back and forth. And I had to also deal with distributors who would order books. We would ship them and they would just not pay us. Sometimes they would be delayed over a year. And I remember there was a very big distributor. We got into a fight and I said, I'm not sending you any more books. And then I said I put them on a prepayment schedule, which apparently was like, you're going to lose our business if you do that. And then I said, well, you can lose the Gorgias books because I need to pay the authors their royalties. So, we've suffered, we've kind of had a lot of challenges up and down, but I also want to reflect back on the team. Whenever there'd be something crazy going on, like we need to get books rushed to SBL, and there's some issues either on the printer end or the editorial end, George would start sending these texts. And Mel is in England, Gemma is in France, and he'd always kid around and say, we will have Gorgias working 24/7, because he would make sure that he would send them an email as we were going to bed at midnight. It will be morning their time, so they could keep working. And it worked actually pretty well. And so we were the first press that had this idea of having remote work environment, because we genuinely tried to hire editors to be in the office with us in Piscataway, New Jersey. And it turns out there are not that many people who are specialized in the type of books that we publish that want to be in New Jersey. But we had so many others who would be, at one time, we had Katie Stott, an editor in Australia. That was before Mel came along. And so we are very sort of transcontinental, but we started doing that before COVID, before working remotely was a thing. So I feel like Gorgias has been kind of like doing things without realizing that that was actually a really good practice to do that. But overall, it's just been an extreme pleasure, and I want to give shout out to Jack Tannous, who's here, because when we first started and we needed to exhibit at conferences, we needed, young graduate students who would be willing to exhibit our books. And Jack was actually our very first grad student on the recommendation of Sebastian Brock, who went and exhibited at, oh gosh, I forgot the conference, Jack. Do you remember what the name of the conference was? I think it was British Library.
I did 4 conferences.
I think you're muted.
Am I muted?
No.
Let me see.
No.
Can you hear me?
You're muted.
I did
Oh, okay.
Oxford Patristics Conference.
I'll put the-
I did the Assyriology Conference at the British Museum. I did
Yes.
the Badges Conference, British Association of Jewish Studies, and I did SBL International at Cambridge.
Yeah.
And those are, I can talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, those are my 4 conferences.
Yes. So it was just really great communicating with Jack before I even got to meet him. And then he came back and, him and John Paul, I helped them move their books. That's a whole other story. But over the years, what I love about Gorgias is that it's, as Gemma said in her introduction, it's really more a family. And I'm an academic. I'm a professor, associate teaching professor at Rutgers University now, and also kind of doing this on the side. And if it wasn't for Gemma, who is my right arm, or Mel, who's George's kind of like, I mean, she's the editor goddess, in my opinion. And Rachel and so many others here, it's just been a privilege. And I feel like we're custodians of the precious work of authors, and we want to make sure that we continue to build on those relationships and take it to the next level, even in the age of AI.
Thank you, Christine. Now, I believe, Christine, you might have a little surprise for George from your dear friend and one of our greatest supporters and most important Syriac scholars, Sebastian Brock.
Yes, I just sent a request to George to let me share the screen.
Aha!
Please give me permission, my dear. Okay, so let me share my screen. Can everybody see it? All right.
George, this is from Sebastian. And Sebastian, would you like to explain a little bit? And then maybe we could have George read it? Or maybe George, you can just
Sebastian
read it.
is muted.
Muted. This is a short and probably not very beautiful poem, but it's addressed to the Gorgias Press. And since press is feminine in Syriac, it's addressed to a woman. And it also very quickly enters words of praise for the staff. And we start out with the feminine forms and then go on secondarily to the masculine forms. And about halfway through the poem, we find that Jacob Esarug has been revived in the reprint of now 20 years ago exactly. And Jacob speaks to George and thanks him for reviving him. And then it ends with a little doxology.
Thank you so much, Sebastian.
Thank you, Sebastian. Okay, so without any further ado then, I would like to present, and I'm sure Sebastian Brock needs no introduction, Sebastian Brock, Emeritus Reader in Syriac Studies at Oxford University, and Sebastian's going to reflect a little bit on his experiences with the press. Over to you, Sebastian.
Thank you very much. Well, the press, when the press came into being, it really was a dream because it was specializing at the beginning with reprints. And George and Christine reprinted all sorts of texts that no commercial publisher would think of doing. And the crowning one for me was one of my favorite poets of Jacob Esarug. And this was published at the beginning of the 20th century by the famous Bejan, who published so many wonderful texts, and most of which have been reprinted by the Gorgias Press. But Jacob Esarug's poems in 5 volumes, and George very kindly said he would republish it. I forget whether the initiative came from me. I was certainly absolutely delighted when he decided to do this. The problem was finding copies because no library and no individual that we knew had a complete set. George had 1 or 2 volumes. I had 3 volumes, and my wonderful colleague and successor, David Taylor, had some more copies. And luckily, we could make up a set of 5 volumes. So I said I would bring over David and my copies for the celebration of Robert Murray's, I forget which birthday, but there was a conference in honor of Robert Murray, a very suitable occasion because Robert's wonderful book, Symbols of Church and Kingdom, was very much written in the spirit of Jacob Esarug. So I brought the volumes over, and they were, I don't know what you did with scan them, I suppose, or something, while the few days, only a few days that I was over there, so probably working night and day. And then I would take all the volumes back. In fact, David was at the meeting, and he was going to take his volumes back, but he forgot in the excitement of the farewell. And so I was commissioned to take his volumes back. And it looked as if everything was well. But when I got to Heathrow, the suitcase with them, precious volumes in them, wasn't there. So on inquiry, I eventually found they'd gone to Sweden for some reason, perhaps because of the very large diaspora of Syrian Orthodox in Sweden. But anyhow, they managed to retrieve them, and it was only about a week later, after my getting home, that I got all the set. But anyhow, some of these reprints have exciting stories behind them. And in many cases, George has written a wonderful colophon somewhere or other explaining this. And the colophon in this case is in English, but in other cases it's in Syriac. So a lot of the history of things of the Gorgias Press is probably hidden away in colophons. So I've always had a wonderful relationship with the staff of the Gorgias Press, and Melanie in particular has been so wonderful. I just don't know how she manages it, because she's also looking after the Geniza fragments in Cambridge. But she's always so efficient and so kind and helpful. So I think the staff, as Christine said, it's like a family. And this is what the wonderful feeling about the Gorgias Press, that it has worked like this and manages to get over all the crises, thanks to being a wonderful family. So I'm eternally grateful to the Gorgias Press for all it does and it goes on doing. And it's amazing how much they produce and the sort of things they produce, which, as I say, no other press, no other publisher would think of undertaking. So Taudi Sagi to Gorgias Press. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. That was wonderful. Next, we're going to hear from Jack. We've already heard from Jack Tannous briefly, but he's going to tell us a little bit more about how he zoomed in like a superhero and got some Gorgias conferences going and much more. Thank you, Jack. Over to
you. So I guess my involvement with the Gorgias Press goes back to being in a class with Sebastian Brock in probably the spring of 2003. And he asked me if, he said, George Kiraz is this new company he started, and he's looking for someone to sell books for him in the UK. Would you be interested in doing that? I said, sure, I'd love to do that. I'd heard of George, and I'd sort of taught myself Syriac in part based on this book I bought off the internet, this yellow spiral-bound book called the Syriac Primer. It came with cassette tapes. And it was the voice of George, and sometimes a woman too. And there's like a parakeet in the background in an airplane, and George saying things like "abo, bobo," all this sort of stuff. So I knew George's voice, but I didn't know George. I said sure, and so I guess somehow maybe Sebastian gave George my phone number, and George called me in my dorm room in Oxford and interviewed me on the phone in my little very small room in Oriel College. And we spoke on the phone. I remember George asked me, I can't remember what he asked me, but I remember I asked him, what's your goal with Gorgias? And he said, well, I'd like to do Gorgias full time. I think at the time he was working like 60 hours a week, doing something else, working for Bell Labs. I don't know what it was, but he was doing Gorgias part time, but his dream was to do Gorgias full time. And so anyways, he hired me, sight unseen, just based on voice. And I went to these 4 conferences in the UK. And I first met George in person in Cambridge, at SBL International in Cambridge. He took me to a pub called The Wrestler, or The Wrestlers. I can't remember what it was the exact name. It had these people wrestling on the sign. And George he ordered really, really spicy Thai food there. I remember George liked spicy food. And so that's when I first met George. And I had this incredible experience going to these conferences in the UK and just meeting scholars and talking to people in the fields that I knew nothing about, like Hebrew Bible. And people said, oh, that's a really famous professor you just talked to. And I remember we had... George just reprinted this thing called the Monuments of Nineveh by Layard's Monuments of Nineveh. And so to a Syriologist, this was a big deal. I don't know if it was out yet or was going to come out. We had signs for the Layard Monuments of Nineveh, and we had eyes getting big over that. I remember Rowan Williams came by my booth. I don't know if he was the Archbishop of Canterbury. He was Archbishop of Canterbury at the time. He came by my booth and was sort of scoping out Gorgias books at the Patristics Conference in 2000 and whatever it was, 3 or 4, probably 4 in Oxford. So these are some memories I have. And so then I came back to America and I started graduate school at Princeton. And I was just telling Christine's story about, so my best friend, John Paul Gobrel, who now teaches, he does like Eastern Christian history in the early modern period, teaches at Oxford. We shipped all our stuff back to America and we found out we had to go up to this warehouse in North Jersey to get it out. And we had no car, we had no nothing. And so Christine very graciously offered to drive us up there to get it. And we go up there and it was like from a bad movie. There's one woman in the whole building and she's behind like 10 inches of bulletproof glass. And I kid you not, I think there's a cockfight going on in the warehouse. It was wild. And Christine walked in there and she's like, I said, Christine, get out of here. Anyways, she got us, we got all our stuff. We got out of there. The place may have been controlled by the mafia. I don't know. It was surreal. And so I came back. I guess I didn't really work for Gorgias anymore, but I still stayed in touch with George and Christine. I was some kind of consultant by this point. And I taught a class at Rutgers in the spring of 2006. And I would go with them George would pick me up on Wednesday nights after my class. It was an evening class. I'd go to their house and Christine would make this amazing meal. And we'd eat all this food and talk about Gorgias Press and books and things that should be reprinted and sort of like dream about things Gorgias could do. And so over the years, I just talked to George a bunch about Gorgias. And I used to send him emails. I used to send Adam McCollum emails. You should reprint this. You should reprint that. When the Robert Murray conference came, I told him, and I'm sure other people told him this too, I said, George, you need to reprint Jacob Sarug, and Sebastian and David between them have enough copies to get the whole thing done. So I remember, maybe he had other inputs, but I remember telling you that before that. And they reprinted, not because of me, obviously, but like they reprinted that. So that was a real, I think I had written down here before Sebastian said it, actually, the Jacob Sarug reprint, I think is one of the crowning achievements of Gorgias. This is all in an era before Google Books. And so just to reflect on what Gorgias has done, I think that things like Jacob Sarug reprint, the reprints were really foundational. Like I'm a person from Houston, Texas. There is no library anywhere probably within 1,000 miles of where I'm from that it would have the books you would need to do Syriac studies. It was simply impossible unless you lived in a place that was buying books in the year, I don't know, 1920 or 1900. You couldn't do Syriac studies. And Gorgias's reprints made that possible. And so it really democratized Syriac studies. And that was sort of Gorgias 1.0, but there's been Gorgias 2.0 and 3.0 and 4.0. And so something like the publication of the translation of the Persian Martyr Acts. Many years ago, Patricia Crona said, Jack, they should publish translations of the Persian Martyr Acts. That would be as important as the translation of Tabari. She told me that. I said, George, Patricia says you should do the Persian Martyr Acts. And George did it. And he had Adam Becker as the editor. Things like that. So not just reprints, but also these new series they've started, Tekla, texts from Christian late antiquity. And they've transformed Syriac studies. They've made it possible to do Syriac anywhere in the world, not just places that had libraries in the year 1900. They're dynamic. It's a nimble outfit. They publish things that no one else will publish. I mean that in a good way. It's not a vanity press. I mean that in a good way. And it's revolutionized Syriac studies. I think many fields would be lucky to have a press like Gorgias that will do things, will reprint, will do kind of forward-looking visionary series and have. And George is also, and that's my last point, he's been ahead of the curve technologically. Like print on demand, you were doing that way before anybody else was. And so he was really pioneering because it's a small outfit. They can do things that bigger places wouldn't do. Anyway, so Gorgias is, I always tell people, I never knew Che Guevara, but I knew another revolutionary. His name is George Kiraz. So he revolutionized Syriac studies. And it's been wonderful to sort of witness it. And when I came on, there was Rotimi, whom I never met, and Sarah Hadodo. There was 2 other employees. I was like maybe their 3rd employee after George and Christine. That's my claim to fame. Okay, I'll pass the baton.
Thank you so much, Jack. That was a fantastic overview, and you could really feel all the personal insights there, and a really great summary of all of our greatest achievements, if you like. So I don't believe that Khalid Dino has been able to make it. Is that right, George? I can't see him in the chat.
Don't see him, no.
Are you there, Khalid?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. Well, in that case, we'll move on to David Marcus, Professor Emeritus of the Bible and Masorah at the Jewish Theological Seminary. David, please.
Oh,
Over to you.
thank you. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be with you all this joyous ceremony. Can you hear me all right? Gemma?
Yeah, there's a bit of an echo, David. I don't know if you've got two devices because your name's shown twice. There's a little echo.
So let me see. How about now?
Still a bit of an echo.
All right. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get out of this and come back to you a little later. Okay?
Okay. Shall we move to the next speaker, David, and come back to you in a minute?
So I'm going to get out of this. I get out of this.
Okay, David, while you do that, what we'll do, we'll move to Sabine Schmidtke, and then when you come back, we'll switch the order, and hopefully we'll have resolved the problems. So, Sabine, are you there? Sabine, for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure most of you do, is Professor of Islamic and Intellectual History at the Institute for Advanced Studies, Princeton. So, Sabine, do you want to come?
Yes, I'm here.
Thanks. And David, we'll come right back to you after Sabine.
Thanks very much, Emma. So I first came across Gorgias Press the way one discovers many important things in scholarly life through an unexpected door. Having just moved from Berlin to Princeton, I attended George Kiraz's famous Syriac classes at Princeton University and bought his Syriac primer. That was in 2013, and despite my less than successful adventures with Syriac, what has unfolded since then is a story not just of publication but of partnership. Gorgias Press describes itself as a press run by scholars for scholars, and its philosophy as publishing for the sake of knowledge rather than profit. And this is precisely what I have experienced in my dealings with Gorgias, both as an author and an editor. My first book with Gorgias appeared in 2018, a collective volume comprising a historical sketch of the study of the Near and Middle East at the Institute for Advanced Study, as well as essays and short studies by IIS scholars, past and present, covering fields as diverse as the ancient Near East and early Islamic history, the Bible and the Quran, Islamic intellectual history, and Arabic and other Semitic languages and literatures. That first publication led to much more. Through Gorgias, I was able to publish facsimile editions of two precious codices. One is a miscellany held at the Alama Tabatabai Library at the University of Shiraz, a rare codex of Zaidi writings testifying to the extended and intensive Mu'tazilite past in the various centers of Zaidi scholarship in the Caspian region, published in 2019 with my colleague Hassan Ansari. And the other one is a manuscript from the New York Public Library, a multi-text volume comprising 7 individual works by 12 Ashi authors of the post-classical period, among them some Unigar, that was published in 2018. Endangered manuscript traditions, this time from Yemen, are the focus of yet another collective volume I published in 2022 with Hassan Ansari through Gorgias, Yemeni Manuscript Cultures in Peril. But my relation with Gorgias extended well beyond publishing individual volumes. About a decade ago, a deeper collaboration evolved with George, one rooted in his extraordinary energy, scholarly breadth, and openness to unconventional ventures. Together, we founded a multidisciplinary project, the Middle Eastern Manuscript Traditions, MEMAT, dedicated to studying the production, utilization, and transmission history of manuscripts across the region. Since 2016, we've had annual workshops on topics including allographic traditions among Arabic-speaking Christian, Jews, and Samaritans, dots, marginalia, and paratexts in Middle Eastern manuscripts, colophons, multilingual manuscripts, misattributions and forgeries, the visual scribe tables and diagrams, and earlier this year, the Bible in Middle Eastern manuscript traditions. These workshops have taken place at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton and in partnership with European colleagues at venues in Vienna, Rome, and Berlin. The proceedings of several have been published by Gorgias, Scribal Habits in Near Eastern Manuscript Traditions in 2021, and Literary Snippets, Colophons Across Space and Time in 2023, the latter accompanied by a companion volume containing examples of colophons and their translations from the ancient Near East to the pre-modern period in Akkadian, Hebrew, Arabic, Syriac, and Persian. Yet the Mehmet workshops are not merely about publications. They bring together scholars from different disciplines, codicology, philology, art history, digital humanities, and from different religious and cultural traditions. Gorgias, in other words, facilitates the creation of scholarly communities, not just books. Our joint engagement in manuscript studies has now given rise to our most ambitious collaborative undertaking yet, the critical edition of the Arabic Vulgate. What makes Gorgias unique, then, is not only the quality of what it publishes, but the nature of the relationships it fosters. As my own experience shows, what begins as a straightforward author-publisher arrangement can evolve organically over time into a genuine scholarly partnership. I cannot imagine another press with anything comparable, where anything comparable could occur. I publish with other, much larger houses as well. But it is precisely this type of smaller presses, run with scholars, for scholars, that remains indispensable for the humanities, especially in fields that will never produce bestsellers, manuscript studies, philology, critical editions, and the like. Where commercial publishers increasingly retreat from niche subjects, where open access mandates do not always align with the exacting needs of text critical or manuscript based scholarship, Gorgias steps in with a willingness to take on unconventional format, from facsimile editions to multilingual companion volumes. Its commitment to making rare and endangered textual heritage accessible in high-quality editions is a mission that transcends ordinary academic publishing. It is, in the fullest sense, cultural preservation. For the sake of scholars everywhere and for the future of humanistic inquiry, I wish Gorgias to thrive for at least another 25 years. That will most certainly bring new forms of publication and collaboration, and that will, I trust, find Gorgias as ever at the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabina. Yes, that I think, even though I'm an employee, that's what I feel as an academic myself, that George and what Gorgias tries to do is build scholarly communities and to include unconventional topics, things that no other presses would do, because it's about the scholarship, it's about the knowledge, it's not about the dollars in the bank. So thank you for that wonderful summary, Sabina. We'll go back to you now, David. Thank you for resolving the tech
Can
problem.
you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Okay.
Over to you, David.
I must say, since the pandemic, I'm on Zoom. I've still not gotten used to this arrangement. In any event, I'm delighted to be with you all at this joyous ceremony celebrating 25 years of Gorgias Press. The Academy is truly indebted to the Kirazes for having the vision 25 years ago of establishing this academic press with the goal of publishing titles in areas that were not usually served by other publishers. Most publishers looked on works on Syriac, ancient languages, theology, and Middle East history, to mention but a few, to be too arcane for their audiences. Not so Gorgias Press, who had the courage and foresight to promote these so-called arcane areas, including my particular area of expertise, that of the Masorah, for which I am profoundly grateful. The Masorah was the work of the Masoretes, whose purpose was to safeguard the biblical Hebrew text, to ensure that it be transmitted to future generations with no changes. To do this, they wrote tens of thousands of notes on the margins of early Hebrew manuscripts of the Bible. My books, published by Gorgias, is the first attempt to transcribe, translate, and annotate these notes for the English-speaking world. These notes are not easy to decipher, as for the most part they consist of Aramaic abbreviations coupled with markers written on top of the words. However, the editorial staff of Gorgias understood the importance of the Masorah. They recognized that preserving and publishing scholarship on the Masorah is, in a very real sense, preserving the history of the biblical text itself. To transmit these Masoretic notes from my transcriptions to the printed page was the job of the editorial staff of Gorgias, who performed this task admirably. For the most part, I am indebted to Melanie, the editor assigned to me. She's here, right? Melanie's here? Good. Who, in addition to her own academic work at Cambridge University, successfully shepherded to publication all 9 of my works on Masorah. No author could wish to have a better editor than Melanie. She not only paid attention to scholarly matters, but also endeavored to produce my works in a form pleasurable to the eye. This was not an easy task, considering the enormous technical details that works on Masorah require. Melanie, of course, was aided by a terrific staff of other editors, typographers, graphic designers, and an office staff, including the organizer of this afternoon's celebration, Gemma, who in her regular job promotes Gorgias books to the outside world. So, to everyone at Gorgias Press, thank you for your dedication, your partnership, and your unwavering commitment to advancing scholarships in fields too often neglected. Congratulations to the Kiraz family on 25 years of remarkable achievement. May the next 25 years bring continued success and lasting impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. That was wonderful. And yes, George and Christine's vision and courage to print these underrepresented subjects is really important. And linking into this with the Masorah, we mustn't miss the chance to say that David's 2 latest Masorah volumes just came into print this month. So please do go and look on the new releases and you'll find them there. Okay, thank you again. Next we have Rivka Ulmer, Professor of Jewish Studies from Bucknell University, who's going to speak a little bit. Over to you, Rivka.
Okay, thank you. I'm very happy to be here at this occasion. 25 years of academic publishing is enormous, and I wish you until 120, until 120, as we say. And my own involvement is mainly through the Midrash section of the SBL. I was either the co-chair or chair for 25 years, and recently I found somebody else because I'm doing other things now. So he always agreed to publish the volumes that we collected. We always picked a few papers that sounded very good, and then the authors could write them, and we edited them, and we published 10 volumes of Midrash section books. And they're hardbound copies. They're aesthetically pleasing. I love books, and I'm glad that I'm among people here who love books. It is really aesthetically pleasing to have these few papers in a hardbound copy. And the other thing I'm doing for Gorgias Press is also I'm the editor of Judaism in Context, where we have several people that read the manuscripts. I get the first pick, and if I see something immediately, I contact Melanie, and we usually agree that we shouldn't even give it to somebody. But also in that series, we have published several books. And the last thing that Gorgias Press did, they opened up the world of the Middle East. Whatever is published in the Middle East, you can also read now through Gorgias Press, and that is an enormous accomplishment. About myself, I have to tell you that I'm from 2 traditions. My mother was from Iraq, so I speak actually Arabic like a child, and my father was from Germany, so it's a weird combination, but that they instilled in me also the love of books and manuscripts. And in my real life, I work with Hebrew manuscripts of the Middle Ages and publish those, not with Gorgias, with another press and so on. But Gorgias Press is really superb because it's really done by other scholars. I've published with all the big names, and they just push out the book and want to sell it very quickly. But I also, for the library here, I order books that nobody ever will read. I needed a Syriac a Bible, for instance, I ordered it for that the library buys everything. I cannot read Syriac. That's the one language I somehow skipped in the 10 languages I had to study. But I can figure out, and there's an English translation next to it, so I can use it in my classes in the Bible and classes on Jerusalem and so forth. So I'm very grateful to be part of this group of scholars who really care about scholarship, which is changing all the time now. The humanities are, not so popular any longer. It's mainly finance and things like that. And all the people I worked with at the press, they are also first-class people to take care of clients like me. And I'm very grateful, and congratulations, Mabruk.
Thank you so much, Rivka. And yes, I do think the by scholars for scholars is something that Gorgias not only says, but it really is at the heart of everything we do. So thank you, Rivka. And last then, but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce Christopher Clohessy from the Pontifical Institute for Arabic and Islamic Studies in Rome. Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a bit of background noise. It's 1,000 fans going because we had 38 degrees in Rome today, which bodes badly for the coming summer. I'm really happy to be with you tonight, specifically for two reasons. Firstly, because, yes, I think that the press is a family. And for me, it's finally a wonderful thing to be able to put some faces and names together. I've certainly met Gemma and Melanie and some others, but tonight, for the first time, I'm seeing faces and joining them to names. More especially, tonight, for the first time, I have learned how to pronounce the name of the press, about which I have been terribly mistaken for the last 10 or 15 years and have consistently fought with people over this. And I discovered tonight, been completely wrong in how I have been pronouncing it. So infallibility is certainly not one of my strong points, which means that there's not going to be much advancement for me after this, at least in Rome. I first published, as I remember, in 2009, and I had been battling to find some press who would publish a work that I wrote on the daughter of the Prophet, on the life of Lady Fatima. And it was a not particularly interesting book and a bit technical, but it was a doctorate that had been reworked and nobody wanted to publish it. A lot of publishers suggested that I should turn it into a novel, and that a novel about the Prophet's daughter would be far more interesting, and that I refused to do. And purely by chance, I came across Gorgias and dealt with some exceptionally friendly people who not only agreed to publish, but who did all of the formatting, which I didn't understand at all. And so that was in 2009. Sometime in the years after that, a whole group of us sitting around a table in the Pontifical Institute in Rome, we were lamenting the fact that so few Muslim scholars were publishing works on the early woman of Islam, the both Shia and Sunni. And we all agreed that we would each of us write a book. I took this seriously and didn't realize that they were not serious about this at all. And so I set about researching the life of one of the daughters of Ali, Zainab, and spent 3 or 4 years reading the early Arabic texts about her life, and then discovered that none of the others had actually done anything. So I contacted Gorgias Press, persuaded them with a little bit of pressure that I wanted to republish the Fatima book because my Arabic, for one thing, was slightly better after 10 years, and I wanted to correct some what I thought were errors, and also to publish on Zainab. So in 2018, 2 books came out, a republishing of Fatima and one of Zainab. And since then, I've written a number of texts, mostly on the woman of the Karbala event, or the woman of Al-Hussein's kind of immediate family. History and biography is my sort of field. I wrote my latest one on Abbas. Again, figures who are hugely popular in the Shia world, but about whom very little is written, at least academically. And I wanted to do that. And now I have a text somewhere buried in the vaults of Gorgias Press, which I hope is being examined and will see the light of day, perhaps even as part of the anniversary. But the 2 things that have delighted me are, number one, the presentation of the book. They're lovely to look at. We have a whole lot of of works now in the Islamic library, our Islamic library in Rome. And they're lovely additions to handle and to look at. There's an aesthetic value to them which delights me, but also the amount of work that the members of the press put into marketing. The number of events I certainly done with Gemma, as I remember, and also I think with Melanie in a variety of mosques and other Islamic centers. It's been wonderful, the marketing of books and book launches. And I think that not all publishers do that. So that has been for me a joy and a delight. I send warm congratulations to all of those associated. And I too wish another 125 years at least. And I send these greetings from all the staff and faculty of our institute, which this year in November turns 100. So like you, we're also celebrating with great happiness, and we send our very best wishes to you all.
Thank you so much, Christopher. And yes, happy anniversary to you too. That's a wonderful synchronization there. And, you know, don't feel ashamed about the name. Gorgias is, there's a long history of people not being able to pronounce Gorgias. So you're in good company. And yeah, thank you again for raising the element of us, Gorgias, enabling the publication of this work on the Shia elements that other publishers hadn't been presenting. So that's the end of our scholar section. Thank you so much to all of our speakers for their reflections. Very briefly, I have 3 lucky names who have been randomly pulled from some numbers that I wrote down earlier, who will each be receiving a $100 Gorgias voucher for attending. And the 3 people are, if you could put your emails in the chat, Mohammed Amin, Jennifer Griggs, who's an author. So Jennifer, I have your email, and Lucas Thompson. So congratulations to you 3. Thank you to everyone who's come. I wish we could give you all $100 to spend on the Gorgias books of your choice. Maybe at the 50 years, we'll do that. So come back for that one. And now, without further ado, we'll hand back to George and Christine, who are going to talk about certainly at least the next 25 years, I hope. So back to you, George and Christine. And thanks again to all our speakers for those fantastic reflections and insights. You really captured the essence of Gorgias between you. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks again.
All right. So I've been told to go first by the big boss. So one of the things we've been kind of kicking around is that we've done some great, in our backlist includes, as many of the speakers mentioned, a lot of great works in terms of reprints, but also new publications. And more we've tried to move, accessibility is a big issue that we take incredibly seriously, because especially for scholars, emerging scholars in the Middle East and or anywhere in the US where they may not be able to have access to libraries that may have our books. We've been doing the Gorgias Open for quite a few of the years. So with recent publications, we've had Gorgias Open be an open source publications. What we're going to be doing as a new thing is we're going to be launching a kind of a new project, but it's just packaged in the same way. And we're calling it the Gorgias Chronicles. What this is going to allow is to go back to our backlist of books and take a look at and maybe bundle or put together important works that maybe were published 10, 15 years ago. I mean, we've been in business for 25 years or 20 years ago. And but they are not available as open access because that was not a format that was available when the publications were coming about. And so we're going to be looking at looking at dynamic pricing of our books. We know that it is difficult, especially for emerging graduate students or graduate students. And Georgia and I both know what that was like, that, you know, one thing you all want is books, but, you know, they may not be affordable. So we're going to be working on dynamic pricing of our books. And that's something we've been kicking around ideas with the team. And and we know that, you know, we have many challenges to face when it comes to AI. And we want to assure our authors that the work of our editors are actually, it's, you know, Gorgias Books brought to you is done by humans, not chatbots. But still, Georgia and I disagree on AI and its impact. But I'm going to turn it over to him, and he's going to talk about how he is going to look to handle challenges that AI poses. I'm muting.
So just a few words on AI. I've been playing with AI for quite some time. As I mentioned, I am a computational linguist. So I've been interested in what these machines can do. And I attended a conference, one of the conferences that Sabine mentioned, and I have noticed the increase of use of AI by speaker. I can note these things as a computational linguist. And I've written a paper called Formulaic Machine, Generative AI, Academic Writing, and the Recovery of Voice, which Gemma can put a link to it. You can download it from the repository at the Institute for Advanced Study. But as AI becomes as it takes over our lives, whether we like it or not, things will be pushed on us by corporations. You may notice that now while you're using your Word document, that you're not the only one writing. That could also bring challenges for us at the press to make sure that it is the voice of the author that is being represented. So I'm planning to do some work in that area to help us keep the voices of the authors as books should be. Utilizing AI when AI is needed, that is the purview of the authors, whether they want to utilize them as research tools or not. No judgment from our end. But as a press, we do need to be kind of gatekeepers to the expressiveness of the text to make sure that it represents the voice of authors. So this will be one of the things that I'll be working on in the next, I don't know, couple of years. I mean, it seems that it may have to be a couple of months, the way things AI is going, but we will see how that goes.
Thank you. Thank you, George. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, everyone. I don't know if George, Christine, we have time. We want to open up the floor to see if any other attendees would like to share anything. So maybe if you can raise your hands, if anyone would like to say anything to George or Christine or the team, we would be happy to hear from any other voices. It's just lovely. I can see lots of authors on there, lots of customer names I see coming up. So please do feel free to, or just to come on and share your thoughts. Anyone?
I'll say one more thing I should have said when I spoke was that something else Gorgias has done, it's been a real bridge between Middle Eastern publications and the West. And they've made a lot of things available that are almost impossible to get in Western libraries. They started publishing things from Aleppo, for example. And so, again, the things they've made easily accessible to people all over the world it's just remarkable, and it's a game changer. And I should have mentioned the publication, republication of Middle Eastern printings as another major contribution, in my opinion. And also the Michael the Syrian facsimile edition is incredible.
Thank you, Jack. Anyone else? Or Mel? I don't know if Mel David, you've got your hand up, please.
Yeah, well, we've heard from a number of speakers and also myself of how much we are indebted to Melanie. And I would just like to know, hear from Melanie, what does she think of the authors?
Melanie, you've been put on the spot. Please.
Okay, here I am. So it is time in English, but I really appreciate the authors And I appreciate all the work that goes into the book proposals and manuscript submissions that come in to us. It's always a delight to open my email and see a new manuscript submission coming in to send out for review. And I see a number of names here on the Zoom this evening that I recognize and I've worked with over the years, and you're all very precious to me, and your books are as well, and I love being responsible for them. Thank you. And thank you to George and to Christine. I started working for Gorgias in 2011, and seems like a different time now, but it's been a journey, and I've loved just about every minute of it.
Thank you, Mel. That was really nice, and obviously from the heart. And what's that? Nearly a third, not quite a third of your life working for Gorgias? Yeah, without wanting to give away any exact ages. Anybody else? Please come on if you'd like to share anything.
I think Susan had her hand up earlier.
Susan,
maybe.
Please.
Oh, I just wanted to first offer my own congratulations for this wonderful anniversary, and as someone who's been helped by, I think, everyone who works at the press at some time or another, but among the many accomplishments that have been mentioned today, I also just want to mention within Syriac studies, the impact of the series that have been bilingual. So the scholarship on Jacob of Saruk has just exploded because of the accessibility of these bilingual texts that Gorgias has produced. The Persian Martyr Acts were mentioned earlier. That's another series. To have these bilingual editions we can use with our students has just catapulted these areas forward, and the impact of Gorgias Press on the field itself is quite outsized to the size of Gorgias, but it's really a testimony to the Kirazes and their visionary impact on all our lives. So of the many things to be grateful for today, I just want to remember those bilingual texts that are such a gift to all of us. Thank you. And congratulations.
Thank you, Susan. Really nice to see you here as well today. Anybody else? Shall we call that a day? I think this has been a lovely event. I'm so pleased to see, sorry, I'm not going to go on a rant.
Sorry, Gemma.
You have jobs.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think Christopher Long had his hand up.
Christopher, please.
Just a small note, Dr. Kiraz, your press is older than I am, and maybe I'm the only one who can say that. I don't know, but congratulations.
Thank you, Christopher. Anyone else got their hands up? I can't see any other ones. Okay, with that, George, Christine, any closing words?
All right.
Well, if anybody else not coming, I will just say very, very few words. I'm Laurentium. I'm very happy. I'm very glad and honored to be this evening with you. I'm a musician, so I'm not really in your field of very deep and very important field of experience, but I'm checking with my friends, and I'm very happy to see Sebastian here. I'm very happy to see new titles, and after so many honored and prestigious speakers were. May I congratulate you and wish you all the best for next 25 and 250 years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad that you could make it. Right, Christine, back to you. Thanks.
All right. It's really, I hope I won't cry, but I just want to say a special shout out to Gemma, who always goes above and beyond. And I cannot tell you what a pleasant person she's to work with. And over the years, I had the pleasure of working with many wonderful former employees who we had the difficult task of, I feel like the most fun part is like, I think George has the most fun part is looking, and Mel, right? They look at the manuscripts, then come in, and then they curate it. And as guardians of knowledge, they put their children out in the world. But then it's Gemma's job to make sure that people know about those children, right? And it's not an easy job, and it's becoming excessively more difficult. And Gemma does it with such grace. I wanted to send a special thank you to her. It's a privilege to work with you. And Mel, as I said, you're the queen. I want to I remember when we interviewed you, I remember asking, you seem very academically gifted. Why would you ever like want to be an editor? And your answer floored me. And that was part of the reason why. George, after taking you back to the train station and came back to me and said, I think this is going to work out really well. And it turns out that he was right, as he usually is. And all these friends along the way. I'm so happy to see John Healy. I haven't seen you in so many years. Thank you for joining us. Sebastian, that beautiful poem. And that's one of Sebastian's specialties. When George and I got married, he also wrote a poem. So every significant sort of uh, thing that has happened in our lives, Sebastian, you've been a part of. So I just feel so privileged to have you as part of our life. And I love this place that it's for authors, and we hope to take it to put to the next level. And I hope that AI doesn't put us out of a job. I don't think it will, but if it won't, it will be because of all of you. So thank you, all of you, everyone here. And also wanted to give a shout out to the Gorgias Book Grant, right? That we've been running for a lot of Susan's former students actually have won. And so, that's always been such a privilege also to see the up and coming, scholars in the field put their best work. So it's just been a very, really amazing privilege. And thank you.
And
George?
the final thing, I just want to say that, without readers, without writers, and without the staff, obviously there is no Gorgias. So Gorgias is you guys. Thank you so much for all your love.
Thank you, George. Thank you, everyone. I think on that note, we shall say, well done, Gorgias, 25 years, 25 more at least. And yes, hopefully 250 years. Was it Christopher said that, or Laurent? Yes. Inshallah. Thank you, everyone. This has been a lovely event. I'm so pleased to see, authors, friends. I'm an employee, but Gorgias really is a family. It's not just something we say. So yeah, I'm getting emotional now too. So we definitely need to say goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon or morning or evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for your support, and keep buying Gorgias books. We need to. Thank you, George and Christine, and all our speakers.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Saudi, thank you so much. Shalom.
Thank you, George and Christine. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful case.